let's talk about the challenges. What are going to be the major challenges that you see the industry, the businesses will face in bringing in AI? So your views on that.
Sure, Hemant. And I think our poll already highlighted some of the challenges is that huge amount of data is required for any AI model to work. And most of the organization have to collect not only their operational data, but also external data that they would want to use for doing any kind of predictions or any kind of AI modeling. Now, how do you collect that data? Data has to be clean, enriched, and curated before you can start using any modeling techniques on that or machine learning techniques on that. Now, that is one of the challenges that I see, where huge amount of data is required for processing, because with small data, you would not be able to do justice to your AI model. You would not be able to do right predictions and so on. So that is one of the biggest challenges today that I see most of our customers, most of our organizations and the industry that we are seeing face, is that, lack of data. Though they are generating huge amount of data, but still not enough. I mean, unlike the generative AI that we are seeing, large language models, which they are adopting, because that is the data that is available across the internet. But how much it is relevant for each industry is still a question, right? So that is one challenge. The second challenge that I see is the skills that are needed for analyzing this huge amount of data that is coming across. And lack of AI skill and talent is one of the biggest challenges that most of the organizations today are seeing. And we are seeing it, in the industry, in newspaper articles, we are seeing so many universities, colleges have started offering data science as a course, AI as a subject of study. In fact, my 14-year-old is going to have a subject for AI in the 9th grade. I mean, imagine we were not only, we just got exposed when we were doing engineering. So talent and AI skill is a big gap that we are seeing, and enterprises are struggling to fill those gaps, and it is not going to be easy. That is challenge number 2 that I'm seeing. Third challenge that I'm seeing is on the ethical and regulatory concerns. A lot of organizations, even countries which are implementing various AI solutions are concerned about the ethics, such as the biases, the privacy, the security concerns. And these are significant challenges for adoption, right? So these are some of the challenges that I see. One last thing that I'm want to cover is on the explainability and interpretability of the AI models. I mean, most of the AI models we see are basically black boxes. So there is no way we can understand how the output or the results that they are showing is actually derived, and how do you interpret those results, right? So that those are, unless you expand more on explainability and how do you interpret that outcome, it will be very difficult to create the trust that you need for these systems to have. Hemant?
Thank you. In fact, on that note of the 14-year-old having an AI course, I think we are constantly learning new things from our children, but I think it's only going to increase with AI and all. We will have to ask them to explain us a few things, and
Absolutely.
they are picking up things pretty quickly. I remember this was 2 years ago when my kid was generating a QR code on the web, and I was thinking, is that even possible? I did not even know that as a individual user you could create your own QR code. So I learned from my 7-year-old how to create a QR code. So yes, I think the challenges, whether it is data, it is explainability, and all those, we are just beginning to see the tip of the iceberg. While large corporations who have been playing with AI, who have been working on it, developing it, probably know the challenges and been living that for quite some time. Those challenges have somehow come out in the world for the average conversation like we are having today in the open grounds. Vinod, over to you on what other challenges do you see coming because of
Right.
AI, new age tech, anything else?
See, there are most of the challenges have been covered by Gautam, but one particular challenge that I would like to highlight from banking perspective is that data confidentiality. You have global regulations which are there, like GDPR and PDP, which have come into play, due to which you are expected as a bank to keep all this in masked, right? You can't get exposed to the customer, or by mistake also you should not go out in the open, and therefore a reputational risk will occur. From a bank's perspective, it's very important that the customer data is not exposed outside the bank, right? So for any bank which is going to implement AI, for example, we started with chatbots and all, and it's been working successfully, and most banks are using chatbot today. So that is something of a big challenge from a banking perspective, that how to handle the data from a GDPR and PDP perspective. That's one of the challenges. Over to you.
Great, thank you.
That also brings me to one more point, that is cyber security, right? That's another risk that is there with AI and generative AI today, and it's very important to see how banks handle this, or all organizations handle this. Right, over to you. You're saying something.
Just because we had one bad actor in the room a few minutes ago, I have to implement blocks and checks and balances, which means that if I don't know somebody, I will be very, very reluctant to have them in the room if I don't know them directly. And that is going to happen to businesses also. The more and the more the AI or tech or other related cybersecurity related threats come up, more will be the regulation, more will be the checks and balances. Somewhere that is likely to create an inconvenience, a longer timeline for your a KYC or something like that, creating some amount of inconvenience for the end consumer. Of course, it is for the benefit and security of the end consumer, but then in everyday life, the consumer does not really see that. Whether it is the checks at the airport or the documentation required by the bank or any other financial services, it is seen as an inconvenience. And we will probably see a lot more of that coming up. So over to you, Salim, your perspective on the challenges.
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, and I'll go to the first cue from Gautam. The learning curve basically. So, if you look at the latest report from McKinsey, today the adoption by CXOs, okay, is around 15 to 30% of AI, okay, and the forecast is that within next 2 years, this adoption is going to increase to around 70 to 80%. So you see that the adoption is very low right now. And one challenge is basically for organizations to implement education of AI. Okay, so at a personal level, how do they utilize your AI? And at an organization level, how do they utilize AI, which is aligned to the strategy of the organization? So that education is going to become very key, so that the application becomes, beneficial to the organization, so the way they want to move ahead. And the second aspect is, how do you utilize AI across the value chain, right? It is not only that we can see AI in silos. So if it is going to benefit an organization to improve sales or improve productivity, or bring in more predictive insights, right? In what part of the value chain are we going to benefit out of it? But then it's not only the single point. The whole value chain has to get automated, so that the data is actually provided, and then you can actually reap the benefit. One example is, I'm sure all of you would have heard about this Chipotle in US, right? Their focus was customer service. How do they improve customer service? And the solution on the AI side, what they've implemented is every kitchen has got an AI based inventory tracker to check real time what is the stock levels in each and every kitchen, and based on the stock levels, they are going to on real time order stocks to be replenished, okay, on an hour-to-hour basis. So what happens is, this reduces the friction of the kitchen and the serving staff with the customers, because now they can focus on the customer experience, right, to make sure that the customer is actually well served. rather than trying to manage the logistics. So this value chain of, how do you actually pursue the value chain? How do you bring in the benefit of AI to achieve your objectives is going to be key. Over to Hemant.
Fantastic. A very good example you mentioned about Chipotle. In fact, that reminds me of an interview I saw, and this would be something like 15 years ago or more, where the head of supply chain, the global head of supply chain of either Unilever or P&G, I don't remember which one, but he was talking about that. He was actually talking about lean manufacturing and just-in-time manufacturing. And he said the ideal state would be that a bar of soap sold in a supermarket triggers the entire supply chain in terms and right up to the order of that much amount of oil and raw material from the suppliers. He said, of course, this is an ideal situation, but practically every hour, if we could just pull together all that data and run our supply chain, we would really be having a great supply chain operating just in time. Now, with the AI operating right into our refrigerators at a consumer level, if you look at it, that can actually become a pretty good reality in the coming times. If more and more AI-based devices get activated in our houses and a lot of information is collected, that would be a reality.